It's hour number 2 of Budweiser's weekday sports beat, and it's a 3-man crew now, along with Trevor Trowbridge, and joined by Bobby Hensley. Is this like maybe the second time you guys have done one of these together? Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
The first time went well. Trevor seemed nice. I enjoyed chatting with him.
Bobby thinks they always go well.
I don't. Well, when it's one-on-one. When it's just me and Sean, it never goes well.
That's right.
Wow, you're kind of rude today.
Rude? I thought that was like an arms open greeting in your world.
I just feel like you throw out the vibe that I'm negative, and I just have to live up to it. And I don't appreciate that.
Oh, okay. See, now you're coming in hot here. I don't know what's going on.
Well, it's cold in the studio, I'll tell you that.
We were doing some stock up, stock down in the last hour, and I forgot to mention this one that Stymie mentioned. Can I give a stock down to ACC officials? He says, I realize it was a penny stock to begin with, and yet somehow it still continues to plummet. That was bad. That was bad. When you think you're getting paid by the flag, you throw. I agree, Stymie. Big stock down to the ACC officiating crew for that game out there Saturday. 24 total accepted penalties in the game. I
always wonder, watching a game, if somebody's been called for holding a couple plays in a row, they're not going to call it 3 plays in a row, so might as well just keep doing it.
Just do it again.
Yeah, right.
Why change?
Yeah. But the penalties are ridiculous. They slow the whole game down, the whole flow of the game. The same issue happened on Monday Night Football last week. If you were watching one of the games, the Denver game, it's always bad.
I didn't even know you could buy stock in ACC officials.
I didn't even know there were ACC officials.
All right, Trevor, I'll start you with this first question. Do you buy or sell that Irish running back Jadarian Price needs the ball more?
Oh, buy. And I'll take it a step further. He needs the ball more significantly earlier in games. I mean, we talked against Boise State. He had 1 carry the entire first half. And we're talking about a running back that has averaged more yards per carry than Jeremiah Love in every game this season except for one. And that was a game where Jeremiah Love went for 8.3 against Purdue, and Jadarian Price went for 8.2. So we're talking about a 0.1 difference. So, yes, I absolutely buy that.
So you're buying that. So this is interesting because I was told a few weeks ago when I said, is Price a better running back than Love right now for the Notre Dame system? No, I was told I was wrong by somebody that hosts this show. I don't know their name.
I don't think I told you that.
Oh, you said the only reason why it looks that way is that he's very talented, but that he gets the carries towards the end of drives and end of the games when the defense might be a little back on their heels, a little tired. You said that. So
are you sure you didn't have this conversation with some jabroni at work?
Does
not sound like
you and Jesse both got at me because I said this would have been the Texas A&M game. I was like, Price just looks really good. I don't know why they're not featuring him. And you can have it's not unheard of to have 2 great running backs at the same time. However, like Price just looked better at that point. Now Love has come back around with Arkansas game and in Boise State, but I think Price is your bell cow back almost right now. Maybe if you give Love those carries that you're talking about with the defense being a little tired, a little gassed at the end of possessions and the change of pace. I think the buy or sell, to be honest, I always say buy. I think Price just looks good right now. Why not give him more till he's out of everything?
I think that the explanation that you just explained about, more tired at the end of drives and things like that may have come from the other co-host and not this co-host of the show.
Not Trevor, to be honest.
That doesn't sound like something I said. We'll have to quiz Jesse when he comes back.
The way that I've been explaining it to people is I think Jeremiah Love is their best player. I think Jadarian Price is their best running back.
Yeah.
There's things that Jeremiah Love can do that, frankly, not a lot of other players in the country can do, let alone other running backs. But I think Price is their most patient runner. I think he's their best lateral cutting runner. But he's not catching a one-handed wheel route and stiff-arming his safety into an end zone.
Right.
That's Jeremiah Love. Like, that's kind of the difference between them. But you need both. So
do you think, because you guys are more X's and O's than I get into most of the time, but is it possible that Price has less focus on him as well than Love? Because when Love's in the game, you have 8 players.
I do think
focused
there's
on him.
something now. We're 5 games into the season now at this point. So if you're a defensive coordinator or a defensive player watching film of Jadarian Price, shame on you if you're relaxing when number 24 is in the game. But I do feel like there is more overall attention paid to Jeremiah Love than Jadarian Price. But I also feel like Price is a more patient runner. I think he is seeing blocks and anticipating blocks better than Jeremiah Love. I think Love he's been more patient, I think, the last couple of games, but I do think he still gets out ahead of his skis sometimes when it comes to some of that stuff. Doesn't always let him set up the way he needs to, doesn't quite see the crease in the way Jadarian Price sees it. But I mean, like to Trevor's point, 15 carries to 1 carry in the first half, Love and Price the other day against Boise State. That just doesn't make sense to me. Like the way that their carries are split right now, Love has 82, and these are just rushing attempts. 82, he has 444 yards. Jadarian Price has 48 carries. He has 356 yards. So he's within 88 yards of him with almost half as many carries. And like Trevor said, he's averaging 2 yards per carry more. It's 7.4 to 5.4 right now. Jadarian Price is scoring a touchdown every 6th time he touches the ball. And listening to the broadcast the other day, it was every 5 times he touches the ball going in. Now, if the carries were exactly the same, that number is going to change a little bit for Jadarian Price, because of just the law of averages and all that stuff. But I still think when you're looking at 82 carries to 48 carries, I think he probably needs at least like in the 4 to 5 more rush attempts per game. Like that would be the minimal. Like if you bump it up that, give him 5 more carries per game. So like if you're going to go 2 possessions for Jeremiah Love and then 1 for Jadarian Price, somewhere in that ballpark, he's got to touch the ball more, it feels like.
Well, and then like you've talked about it before, and the whiteboard conversation. If you ever were going to do a real Wildcat, you could have them both doing stuff at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm sorry, the chat's moved too much, but there was somebody in the chat said, what a lovely problem to have for a program, to have both guys like that. I just think that here's another. I think Price, I would give him more. However, if you're giving Price more and like they have a rough game or one game doesn't go great, it's like, why didn't you give it to Love more? Now, to that point, to Trevor and Sean's point, 1 carry and a half, that's ridiculous. I don't know why. I don't know what game script there is where it's, oh, we'll just get him 1 carry a half. And I guess maybe you're saving him for the end of the year. I guess save injury. It just makes no sense.
But But no, I mean, who are you saving for the end of the year? Like
Price, if he only has 1 carry per half.
But I mean, you should be worried about getting your star running back, like both of them through the year. And but this is a J1 Sider thing. Like when you look at how he handled those 2 running backs at Penn State last year, like you didn't have a third back who was seeing significant time. And those 2 guys, like the carries right now are about the same as what those guys were doing at Penn State last year. It almost like, do you think that Sider is trying to win Jeremiah Love a Heisman, or like getting him into Heisman conversation with the way with the usage that he's got so far?
To a degree. I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the first part of the show, Sean. I think that some of the injuries to Kedron Young and Aeneas Williams to start the season really kind of threw a wrench in what the perceived running back rotation was going to be. So then I think they just relied on, hey, we got 2 guys. We're going to ride with them. But I mean, unfortunately, I don't know if you're going to be able to win the Heisman with 440 rushing yards through, 5 games? I mean, Ashton Genty didn't win the Heisman Trophy, and he had like 1,000 rushing yards at this point in the season. So, like, I just maybe, but
no, that's a good point. But it doesn't make sense. Would you rather have a player be up for Heisman candidacy that's probably not going to get it anyway? Or would you rather make sure that you're developing your offense for every game?
Exactly. because because again, like when you look at the way the two run and the fact that there is not a drop off, and in some cases there is actually an increase in run production when you have Price on the field compared to Love. Again, like to the point, yeah, it's a great problem to have. You've got to have at least two really good running backs if you're going to be successful. But for Jeremiah Love and for Notre Dame to be successful beyond November and into December and January, because that is still the goal, it feels like you would want to be giving the ball more to Jadarian Price right now to make sure that you're not putting too much on the legs and knees and everything else of Jeremiah Love, because you're going to need him to make another successful playoff run. Because let's be honest, if they're not in the playoffs, I don't think either one of them is playing in a bowl game once you get past November, if they're not in the playoffs this year.
Well, that's a whole different issue. It's an accurate one, I'm saying, but is the development of Carr and the way that he's been able to throw the ball kind of changing how they do the running game, though? Because if he wasn't starting out so hot, they'd have more people in the box, and neither running back would probably be putting up good numbers, and they'd probably have to rotate more just to wear down people and stay fresh. But now it's like we have all these options on offense as Notre Dame, and it's that's the wonderful problem I think it is. In terms of the Heisman thing, does it matter? I think that's an old person thing. I don't think that matters as much as it used to.
Did you just throw a shot right at me?
Like, yeah, I looked away from the camera to look at you. But yeah, I do think that's a misnomer anymore. I think, yeah, it's nice to be up for candidacy of it, and it's cool to get the publicity. I don't think that matters.
You don't think a running back coach cares if his running back, wins
maybe
an award
a running
like
back
that?
coach or any lower coach, not the head coach. They want to win games. They want to develop the program to make the playoffs, especially with the way they can transfer and move around. I don't think a Heisman means as much as it used to.
By the way, Trevor, side note here. Did you see the tweet that Deela McCullough had before the game about Ashton Genty? He called him Deuce, but he talked about, they were going to be watching the Notre Dame Boise State game together, obviously, because Genty went to Boise State. But McCullough was talking about the kind of development that Love and Price had prior to this year. It feels like there's a little bit of a running back coach rivalry going on, maybe, because like Sider has mentioned, like every once in a while when Sider does media, he'll talk about, well, the old running back coach did this, we're doing this, like he'll make those comments.
I remember that. They in one of his latest press conferences, I think Sider said something to the point of like, their previous running back coach taught them to be good running backs. I'm teaching them to be good football players.
Right.
And it's like, okay.
Yep.
Well,
there's some ego involved there.
A little bit.
Hurt feelings.
All right. Over under 4.5 more times Notre Dame scores at least 50 points in a game this season.
Ooh.
Trevor?
Oh gosh. I'm taking the under.
No, come on. You're supposed to take the over, and then I can argue the under. You're not helping me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll take the over.
No. Okay. Well,
look, this offense has been electric so far this season. Slight hiccup against Boise State, but we're talking about them going over 50 points 5 in their next 7 games. That's a lot of points. And I don't know if they're going to be able to put up 51 against Navy like they did last year. Look, Navy had 5-6 turnovers last year against Notre Dame, and 3 of them were just from Blake Horvath with his injured thumb dropping the football. I don't know if you're going to have that type of success. So I'm going to take the under. I think you're going to play some better teams. I think you're going to be playing some better offenses, which is going to result in Notre Dame not having the ball as much. So I unfortunately am taking the under. I would love for it to be the over. But
I'm curious because you mentioned Navy, and Navy, obviously you always bet the under because the way they run the clock and the way they do their schemes. So are you saying they're the linchpin to this? If it was 4 games over under 50 points?
Yeah, I could very well.
Maybe is it?
Yeah, I do, because I could absolutely see them going over 50 against Stanford. They're atrocious. I could see them going over on Syracuse because, unfortunately, after they lost Angeli, the the wheels have kind of fallen off.
Mm-hmm.
Boston College's defense is Swiss cheese, and Pitt's defense, it's kind of And then I'm never going to bank on Notre Dame going for over 50 points against a rival in USC. That's tough. They got close last year, but you needed 2 pick sixes at the end of the game to get to 49.
Right. But I do think USC's defense is probably even worse this year than it was.
Yeah, but like he said,
year.
you got 14 bonus points, so without that, you're down to 35.
I want to go over, but I think that
the only reason the over could hit is because they cannot take off their foot off the gas of any of these games. Like, you have to beat all your opponents by what you have to beat them to, because you lost your 2 best opponents. So if you're going to make the playoff, you have to really throttle down and make it as big of a gap as you can every game.
Yeah, and I think that where they also might dial down is like what happened against Purdue, where they're going to have some reserves in the game, if at all possible, in the fourth quarter. And, so they might get to, obviously they broke 50 against Purdue. But what I'm saying is, you might see them throttling down, and you're not necessarily going to get that high. I think 4 is very doable, though, against these 7 teams that they've got the rest of the way. And again, it's NC State, USC, Navy, Syracuse, Stanford, BC, and Pittsburgh. I think 4 is a very doable number to break 50.
Because I agree with what Trevor said, though. I think it's Navy. The way they melt the clock, unless something breaks just the right way, and they got lucky last year.
Well, and turnovers
Right.
were a huge part of how that game unfolded last year. Very uncharacteristic. I don't think Navy had barely turned the ball over, if at all, going into that game, and they just imploded against Notre Dame
with
in
a
that
broken
game.
thumb. But also, I'm saying that as you get later in the year, you have to put more statement wins out there to try and show the committee that you deserve the playoff run. And I know nobody wants to talk about that. That's kind of what we're getting at here, and especially when there's not a lot of ranked teams left for them to show anything against.
Yeah.
Well, and like Indy Forever 72 was saying, let's not talk about playoffs,
I
pipe
know.
it down, get ahead of yourself. But look, you still coming into every season, that's what you're playing for. And I'm not saying you put the cart in front of the horse, but what I'm saying is you do have to manage your team as if you are going to play more than just 12 or 13 games when it's all said and done, because you still have the opportunity to do that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd still even play devil's advocate and say now's the perfect time to start talking about the playoffs. Look at these next 2 weeks of college football, big picture. I mean, look, Notre Dame moved up 5 spots in the AP poll by beating Boise State 28-7. They didn't do it because they beat Boise State. They did it because all of college football around them was kind of college footballing. But if Notre Dame would have beaten Boise State at home like 21-17, just an ugly game where it's just nobody really pulled away, Notre Dame just had the better athletes at the end of the day, I don't know if they move up 5 spots. So you have to hope for chaos around you. And to Bobby's point and to Sean's point, you just have to handle business, and you have to beat these inferior teams like they are the inferior teams.
Exactly. North Carolina lost 38-10 to Clemson to fall to 2-3 last weekend. My question to you guys, is Bill Belichick risking his legacy with this whole college coaching experiment?
Knowing when to walk away, I think, is a very undervalued part of sports. I mean, you talk about guys like Brett Favre, and it's like, a lot of people remember him for what he did with the Packers. I also remember him for what he did with the Jets and the Vikings. I mean, with Bill Belichick, sometimes it's like you kind of have to know when it's your time to be done. And I also think that with all of the just weirdness around that program right now, even for stuff off the football field, I think that's also weird. So I would err on the side of yeah.
There's 2 questions here. You saying, is he damaging his legacy? And Trevor's talking about when people need to learn how to walk away. I love both conversations, but I don't think he's risking his legacy. Look at Nick Saban, who went to the pros. Did he risk his legacy because he left LSU with the championship, went to the pros, epic failure with the Dolphins, went back to Alabama? So I don't think that he's risking his legacy. His legacy is already that he might have the most successful career as a coach ever. Even as a coordinator, when he stopped the Bills when he was on the Giants as a defensive coordinator under Parcells. I think he already has his legacy built. This would have been another feather in the cap. I don't think he's risked losing anything. To your point, the only part is maybe the off-field stuff with his lady friend or whatever. So that part might be true, but I think we look back, you talk about Brett Favre, there's a lot of people that have switched career or teams at the end of their career, and we just give them a pass. Like Joe Namath didn't finish with the Jets. Johnny Unitas didn't finish with the Colts. Everybody, if you look back, not everybody, but a lot of the players, they switch teams at the end for a couple more paychecks, and we just give them a pass after enough amount of time's gone by. So I don't think that part of it's true, that the walking away is what's tarnishing his legacy. I think it might be his off the field stuff, but I think we can all agree that maybe it's an epic disaster.
It is an epic disaster.
At the minimum.
It is an epic disaster because right now there's a big question about whether or not they're even going to win a game against a Power 4 opponent this season. They've been outscored like 120-33 by Power 4 competition this year after getting shellacked. I think Dabo took it easy on him in the second half. I think it was I think that they they were up like what, 35-10 in the first half or something. You know, they ended up winning 38. I think Dabo felt sorry for him, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Did you see that they, you know, Hulu was going to do like a season long following North Carolina and Bill Belichick, and they just announced that they've already canceled that? Like, North Carolina decided we don't need this train wreck out there on TV to go along with the train wreck that's on TV every Saturday. So I agree to an extent with what Bobby's saying. I think big picture, like 20 years from now, the whole, oh yeah, it'll be a sidebar. Oh, and by the way, he went and tried to coach in college. It didn't work out very well, but he's still going to be Bill Belichick, the guy who won all the Super Bowls and who was dominant for more than 2 decades in the NFL, and what he did as a coordinator with the New York Giants before that as well. So I don't think that, I think that because of the social media world where everything is plastered out there, world that we live in right now, like right now it all seems amplified, but I think we get a few years down the road, no one's going to care one way or another. It's mostly going to be, oh yeah, and he also, you know, dated someone who was young enough to be his granddaughter.
Well, it depends how far down the path that goes. But I think the Bill Belichick, the way he ended up in New England, that would have been where his legacy could be questioned. Because it's like, how did he end up in the whole mix with the Jets, Browns, and then end up in New England? He's been fired. But all that stuff we let go. So I don't think there's a reason why a failed college run, it's something that you could argue is new to him because it's the college game, not the pro game, and recruiting and the NIL, and he jumped in too old. I think we'll let it all go eventually. I don't think it'll take 20 years. I think it'll take a couple of years once we're like, yeah, that was stupid. Like, would we look bad at Mac Brown for the last few years that he had at North Carolina?
Yeah. Yeah. You still think of Mac Brown as a guy who won a national championship at Texas, but maybe largely underachieved for a good deal of his career.
Well, that's the whole point too. But I'm saying just because he had a bad couple of years at the end of North Carolina, we don't change the way we think about him as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't think that the ending always is your epitaph. It's I don't know.
I agree.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm more of a, maybe it's just recency bias, but some cases are alike and others are different. My pushback with the Nick Saban one is he wasn't near the end of his coaching career when he tried the NFL. Right. I think Bill Belichick was at the end of his coaching career and then tried college. Yeah. And it's like, that's just the wrong time to get into it.
See, I could argue almost the opposite, saying like, okay, if you're in the middle of your coaching career, now is the best time to try this because you're hot, you're doing your stuff. Whereas now it's almost like Belichick. What do you think Belichick's expectations were for this year? It wasn't to win a national championship.
Well, it wasn't to win a national championship, but they came in, he and Michael Lombardi, his general manager, came in basically bragging to the world that this is going to be, you know, the next NFL franchise, basically. Like, we're going to set you up for your chance to go to the NFL. Quite honestly, it's the same kind of stuff that Charlie Weiss was talking about when he came in flashing Super Bowl rings when he came to Notre Dame. And I think it is, a very transactional type situation. And when you look at a guy like Bill Belichick, it has always been transactional. And it's why I didn't think that, like, his way of doing things in the NFL was very cutthroat. And you can't be like that in college. Like, it's college athletics are in a much, much different place than they were like 40 years ago when you had, like the Tom Osborns and the Barry Switzers and, like those kind of people, like the Marcus Freeman model, quite honestly, is much more the model of today, a coach who relates to players, and that's not what Bill Belichick is. He does not relate to players. He has never really, like, you've heard the stories about, he's a much funnier guy behind closed doors and all that kind of stuff. And there was some of that with Charlie Weiss as well. But I mean, it's just a much more transactional model that Bill Belichick has. And that's why I think a lot of it has just fallen completely flat. And I'm really curious to see how long they let it last in North Carolina, because obviously there was a separation between the athletic department and the people like above Bubba Cunningham in terms of what they wanted and who they wanted for that job. Bill Belichick was not wanted by the athletic director, but people above him got their way because he was a very high-profile guy. But I think that he thought he was going to come in and at the very least win 8 or 9 games this year and give himself one last chance to get back to the NFL, because he didn't get that chance after he was let go in New England.
Well, there you go. I think that's it. To go back to your first question, your legacy question is he got let go by New England. He didn't leave on his own accord, and he might not reply well to the players, but he'll probably get along with their girlfriends at the same age as the one he has. But like I say, I just don't think that it's going to really tarnish his legacy. But then who's his defensive coordinator?
I have no clue.
Steven Belichick.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So I think part of what they're doing, he wanted to go for a year. Like you say, maybe I think just a bowl season was enough for him, and he'd be gone again, either to the NFL or retire to broadcasting or podcasting or whatever. And his son would take over as the heir apparent. And that's all he wanted to do, was just keep it good enough to get to him next year. So, I mean, the problem with his legacy, to your point, might not be his legacy, but he can't leave it to his son because they're both going to get fired.
Well, yeah. Another big thing that came out of the NFL this week, Cardinals running back Emari Demercado dropping the ball in celebration before crossing the goal line at the end of a long run against the Tennessee Titans ended up being the difference in a 1-point loss to Tennessee. So I've got a couple different things on this. One, what would you do with a player who does something like that? I'm dropping the ball before I cross the goal line.
I'd bury him on the bench. I mean, if I'm a coach and you can't do the one thing that you're expected to do as a running back, and it's ball security, it's not even like somebody forced the fumble. You just got too excited and dropped the ball before the goal line. I think that's crazy. And the Colts did the same thing to A.D. Mitchell this past week. Absolutely benched him and didn't see the field
because he cost him the game the week before.
Mm-hmm. And so I would say you bench him. I think you bury him on the bench and you make him earn his way back up.
Well, the only thing I'm going to say is he was already fourth in the depth chart before the season started.
Well, and that's the thing. The only reason he got a chance is
so,
because they've got 2 running backs who were already hurt already. Trey Benson had knee surgery last week, and Connor the week before, or not the week before, but Connor was already injured. So that's the only reason he was getting an opportunity to begin with, because other guys were hurt. Like, he was getting his chance out there.
And he was still the backup even last week.
Yeah.
This week, whatever you want to call it. And then, so that was his one carry that he broke through the line and got through. And if I'm him, yeah, you'd think that might be your one big break. You might carry the ball for another 5-6 inches just to get in. It's been an epidemic in the NFL this year, though. Several, like you said, the Colts game, same thing. That was the biggest play of the game, and the guy dropped it. And then it's not even just a fumble, or it's a turnover coming back the other way. So you don't get your points and they get the ball. It's like a technical almost in basketball.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Tom,
Fine them, bench them,
so what you said about
cut them.
a player like that, I would like to easily say cut it. The same thing happened to me MLB playoffs. Somebody didn't run to first and got out on an error. What can you do? I think the best you can do is bury him on the bench, and especially on a roster where it's depleted by injuries.
Yeah, I mean, then you've got to either bring somebody up from the practice squad who you didn't think was as good as him to begin with, or you've got to go out on the street and try to sign somebody who may or may not be as good as him, at that point. So, like, cutting him bench, they're in a little bit of a tough spot because the other side of the, I think as a team, you should have the right to fine a player if you want, like hit him in the pocketbook, well, at least you can keep him around.
Yeah.
But, like Jonathan Gannon, the head coach, that's the other side of this. He, not only got up and berated him in his face, but he, thumped him in the chest a couple of times after it happened. Now, he did go back and apologize. Like, what do you think about that side of things? The beratement by the head coach of a player like that on the sideline. Trevor?
I mean, good for him for acknowledging the player. I mean, again, it's just one of the – I think there are some mistakes that you make in sports, and I think that is one of those that is just inexcusable.
I agree. And it seems like these things – like, I don't know why, but like you said, like this season, but like the whole flipping the ball before you cross the goal line is like – as a player in the mentality, like once you cross the goal line, you can do whatever you want with the football. Why are these guys, why is it in their nature that's like, I got to toss the ball before, I got to start to flip it before I even get there because I'm so cool.
It's coming to a head, but it had been 10, 15 years ago. And I can't remember if it was Odell Beckham or someone in a high school game, the San Antonio game. He did a head flip before the end zone. And he landed on his head before the end zone. The ball popped out, and it was a fumble. So this has been happening. It just seems like it's getting more and more prevalent. And the coach going after him, I think that's okay. It shows that he's in tune with his team. Because I feel like if you're that comfortable with your guy that you can get in his face, that's just your style. Like, we want to all have Marcus Freeman as our coach, or I would say, you're doing okay, but like it's okay for me. Like Nick Saban wasn't that sweet on the sidelines with his players.
And he didn't just do this in a blowout situation. He did it in a game they ended up losing by.
They blew the lead on.
Right. Blew a big lead, and they ended up losing by 1 point as a result. Fill in the blank. Start with Trevor, the Bengals fan, on this one. The Cincinnati Bengals trading with the Browns for Joe Flacco today is blank.
Pointless. I'm sorry. I'll just call it like I see it. Look, at the end of the day, you could go pick up whatever quarterback you want. Your starting running back is averaging 2.5 yards a carry. And that offensive line cannot protect. I mean, they could put up cement walls in front of them and they still couldn't stop a pass rush. And Joe Flacco's like 50 years old. And so it's all going to be the same. I've never seen a team more reliant on one individual person than the Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Burrow.
It's kind of amazing. But I mean, Browning does have 8 interceptions, and he's only played parts of 4 games.
Gunslinger.
I realize Flacco's literally on his last legs at this point. But doesn't it feel like if you've got 2 receivers like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, like at least Flacco gives them a better chance to get the ball to them? Because
and Gesicki at tight end, you got some weapons.
Yeah, but I mean, you literally have the best 1-2 punch in terms of wide receivers in the NFL. And the fact that Jake Browning, until the other day, barely knew who number 1 was. Doesn't Flacco at least give him a little bit better chance to get them the ball?
No, I mean, look, at the end of the day, Jake Browning started games for the Bengals when Joe Burrow tore that tendon in his wrist. So it's not like he was a free agent pickup and he didn't pan out. And now they need to find a new guy. It's also why
he should have been better this year, I think.
Agreed.
The organization should have known more about what they were getting from him. The fact that he
had a better backup in place, just in case, to your point, that you need something that you're not relying on Joe Burrow for everything.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's tough. I think you had the opportunity to go get a Jameis Winston, who's a little bit younger and a little bit more athletic in the pocket than Joe Flacco.
Still did. still did have a chance to go get him.
Yeah.
Yep.
And in fact, like, why? I wonder if they inquired with the Giants at all about trading for Winston, considering he's buried on their depth chart in New York.
Dart came out with a questionable tag out of Sunday's game, and he got cleared to be healthy today. But I wonder if they wanted to keep him. But how many more weeks is Joe Burrow out? It's not the whole season.
No, but he's not going to be back until after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So by then your season's already over.
Season. Yeah.
Yeah, just Browning's not it, but Joe Flacco. What about Joe Flacco makes him appealing in a trade? I don't see. Yeah, he won a Super Bowl 20 years ago. That's it. I mean, we joke about, well, not joke, but Browning does have a lot of interceptions. He's at least throwing the ball. He won the first game that Burrow got hurt. He actually brought them back. If you're
arguing for Jake Browning over Joe Flacco right now, I might as well just shut off your microphone, because I haven't watched the Cincinnati Bengals the way Trevor has probably watched the Cincinnati Bengals. But again, like having Jamar Chase on my fantasy football team as an example and seeing the fact, no, I'm just saying I'm not.
Oh, you're hurt.
My point is Jake Browning, until this past week, barely knew Jamar Chase existed on that team. And that's a problem for a guy who's been around in that organization for 5 years.
The NFL as a whole, there's only so many quarterbacks that are game-changing. Look at the Ravens' struggles losing Lamar Jackson. It might be more one-man reliant than, because going to Cooper Rush just wasn't it for them. And then they went from being an elite team to absolutely not having a shot. So,
but bringing in Cooper Rush was also a problem, considering the kind of quarterback Lamar Jackson is and the kind of quarterback that Cooper Rush is. I thought that was very foolish of the Ravens.
Hopefully one of your guys' teams trades for Tua and he can leave Miami and then they can start rebuilding. Yeah, no, you don't want him?
Trevor is shaking his head. No, that plays on the YouTube stream, but not on radio.
Yeah. There's only so many quarterbacks, honestly, in the league that can game change and be prolific. And yes, that's Burrow. Yes, that's Lamar.
And I mean, I'm not expecting Flacco to be prolific, but I mean, this was an organizational problem.
So you're saying it was a good move for them?
Because like you talk about how bad their offensive line is, but they made the decision to draft Jamar Chase instead of a left tackle a few years ago when Jamar Chase was coming out of school. All right, we got to wrap it up with that. Trevor, appreciate you as always. Bobby, somewhat anyway.
It's mutual.
I'll talk to both of you guys
mutual.
on Thursday. We've got Wake Up the Echoes coming up in the next hour.
Bang.